Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabester here. This is the Heroic Healer Guide for Kor'kron Dark Shaman. And this video should assist healer players with all the basics they'll need to get through this encounter on Heroic difficulty. So to begin, let's talk about Heroic abilities. There are two of them that are added. The first is Iron Tomb, which you can see spawning on the top left of the screen there. This is cast by Earthbreaker Haromm, and it prefers to target players outside of melee range, up to 3 targets total. However, if there's only one player outside of melee range, it will target one person only, which is important in the strategy section. So the basic idea is when it spawns on you, you have 3 seconds to move outside of it, where it spawned, and avoid taking damage. If you're still in the location within 3 yards of its spawn, you'll take 500,000 damage, which is pretty severe. So the best thing you can do is if you're near Haromm when it's appearing, make sure you know exactly when it's cast, watch your feet, and if it spawns on you, sidestep just a couple yards. Once it appears, you can freely move up next to it as much as you want. It will not harm you. The other new ability is from Kardris, which is Iron Prison. And this is cast on random players, 2 players every 30 seconds. When it expires, there is a huge damage hit equal to 100% of the player's life. So basically this requires that anyone targeted by Iron Prison uses a personal cooldown when the debuff is about to expire. It's a 60-second duration, so you need to make sure you have a clear indication of when that's occurring. As a healer, especially if you're just dealing with Kardris rather, as you see I'm doing here, the basic plan is simple. Keep everyone topped off, and watch closely for the expiration timers of that Iron Prison. Everyone should be able to use a personal cooldown. You can see there in the top left I have a warning for myself. And when it's about to expire, you cooldown it, and then as a healer just top that player off again so that they don't take too much damage from the other incidental stuff that's going on. But other than that, it's a pretty simple new mechanic to deal with. Now there are 2 main strategies that you can use on this fight. And in this video I'm only going to talk about one of those, which is the method you see here called the split strategy. The other option is to keep the bosses together, use 2 tanks to swap them back and forth, kind of as it was intended. But the common method, which is what you see, is to split them up entirely. For nearly the entire duration of the fight, the boss mobs are kept at least 100 yards apart from one another and dealt with by entirely separate groups. So here you can see we have 7 raid members, 1 tank, 1 healer, and the rest DPS on Kardris, with the other 3 raid members, 2 tanks and a healer in our case, dealing with Haromm. Typically, if you're on Haromm, you'll use 1 or 2 healers up there, depending on how strong your healing is, and then you'll just have 1 healer on Kardris, because dealing with Kardris is very simple. So the primary challenge for dealing with Haromm's healing is the sheer amount of damage that's going on there. In addition to pretty heavy tank damage, just from melee hits as well as from Froststorm Strike, which spikes the tanks quite a bit, the main difficulty up there for healers is Toxic Mist. And this targets 2 random raid members. It prefers ranged players, non-tanks, but if you only have 1 healer up there like we do, then it will always target a tank instead. You can also have it target a healer and a DPS if you have a DPS up there instead of a second healer. But either way, just be aware that it's going to target 2 players. And this damage is extremely high on Heroic. So the healing requirement for the Haromm group is excessive. It will be a common method, as I said, to use 2 healers up there along with 2 tanks. And that way, both healers get Toxic Mist, and the tanks do not need to worry about that extra bit of damage on them. But either way, your main concern as a healer will be dealing with that damage. In addition, there's a lot of incidental damage that you'll need to cool down or mitigate in some way. So specifically, you have Foul Stream, which can target you as a healer, and if it does, you're going to get hit by it. If you're the actual target, it will hit you when it lands. You cannot dodge it. So you need to use a cooldown of some sort if you have Toxic Mist, which you always will, at the same time. In addition to that, there's Ashen Wall, which should never hit you. And then there's Iron Tomb, which should also never hit you, but you do need to move for it every time it's cast. It will target you if you're outside of melee. And then lastly is Falling Ash, which is technically from Kardris, but it's the one ability that has a large enough radius that it will hit players in the other group, even if they're outside of 100 yards. So when any of those occur, there's going to be potential for incidental extra damage on you as a healer, as well as the other members in your group up there by Haromm, and you need to deal with that appropriately. So I can't really give specific tips on, class-based healing. We had our Holy Paladin dealing with the healing up there with 2 tanks, and like I said, it's an excessive amount of healing, but props to him, he finally managed to figure it out and can now kind of do so consistently. But if you're just learning this, you probably want to try 2 healers initially just to get used to the damage, and then you can try 1 healer later once you're kind of accustomed to it. Now, the other assignment for Kardris healing is much simpler, and that's the role I was given here. As you can see in the footage, the basic pattern here is just like the normal difficulty of this encounter. So depending on your positioning and all that stuff, the only thing you have to worry about is the addition of Iron Prison. The best thing you can do as a healer is to keep people topped off. I mentioned that in the earlier section. And other than that, it's just a matter of knowing when basic abilities can and will hit. As long as your raid avoids storm and tornado damage, there's really no unknown or incidental random stuff that can happen to you. So as a healer, you should have no trouble dealing with the healing requirements for this section if you're split up. In fact, I spent most of my time just doing DPS, and once a Iron Prison goes off, then you might just need to worry a little bit about topping people off before Storm or the Falling Ash hits. But the timing of those, you'll get used to very quickly, and again, it's pretty simple to deal with. So can't offer much tips for healing specifically, other than just keeping people topped off and making sure you watch the tank when the geyser blobs are coming out. Other than that, it's pretty simple. So that is the Heroic Healer Guide for Kor'kron Dark Shaman. It's a pretty difficult fight, but again, it's mostly a matter of healers getting used to the Haromm damage output that exists up there, especially if you're using the split method, and dealing with the cooldowns when miscellaneous damage occurs outside of the toxic mist. As always, good luck, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please subscribe.